Inspiration Nation. Hello, Lee Kemp here for another week on a podcast with both Ryan Boniface, Jose Noya, and I've managed to press all the buttons so everyone can actually hear us this time as well, which is a bonus I think everyone will find. How are you guys both doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, good. How are you, Lee?
I'm good, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are as well. Right, so, as I said to you guys when I came on, I've turned to my good friend Gerald Peter Smithson to get some ideas on what we're going to talk about for this week's podcast based on previous conversations that we've had. So I've got a quote for you guys, and this quote comes from an ancient Greek poet who I will probably not pronounce his name correctly at all, but his name is Archilochus. Archilochus. We're going to go Archilochus.
Okay, go with that.
And the quote that I have for you is, we do not rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training.
I've heard this one. I'm sure I've heard this. Fall to level of training.
Yeah, we do not rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. Now, so you know, and where you've got this from, Archilochus, I'm going to go with that. I don't know if it's right or wrong. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But if you correct by leaving me a comment, I'm not going to know how to actually say it because it's still going to look the same. So I don't know how that's going to work. Try and find a way of leaving me a voice memo. This was popularised by somebody you may have heard of by the name of Mr. James Clear. Don't know if you've heard of him before, Jose?
I never heard of the guy. Who is this man?
So he's
Sorry, James.
popularised this in recent times. So this is a James Clear. Jose, what are your thoughts on this quote before I give you some excellent tailored commentary and questions?
I love it. We do not rise to the level of expectation. We fall to the level of our training, right? That was the quote, right?
Yeah.
This is really good, isn't it? Because I refer this back to anything that we do, but my tennis in particular. For me, it is you go on court expecting to sort of do well, but you're only going to be as good as the training you put in or the reps. It's not with anything.
I like
think.
that reps. I like reps.
Yeah, and for me, it's you could. I mean, this is the thing I find about this quote as well, because I've always found that when people try and do something like, oh, I'm going to do my first video, or I'm going to try something, they expect to be really good, but really the expectation is unrealistic because you've never done it before. So why would it be good? The first one's probably going to be awful because you've not done any training, you've just done it. And I think there's that level of perfectionism that comes into it where we don't try because our expectations are so high of ourselves, but we do fall to level of our training because we've never done it before. For me, that's the tennis. When I played when I was 18, I played for a bit of fun, and now I'm 55 and I'm playing, league tennis, but it's taken me 5 years, probably my 5 years, my 6th year to sort of get to that level of tennis. And I've still got tons and tons to learn because it feels quite simple when you look at it, but there's quite a lot to it. But I do like to simplify it. But that's what I'm going with there, is that you do fall to level your training, whether you're running, whether you're, like I did my press ups, whether I do my walking. You start with 5 minutes, but you only go 5 minutes, come back. That's my expectation. Going to do 5 minutes. If I can't try and do longer, then I'm going to suffer a little bit. When did I do that? I did a 12-hour walk that time. That's all my videos.
Yes,
that was grueling. I expected a 12-hour walk. I thought, oh, that's quite more grueling than I thought. So I fell to level of the training that I'd never done it before, and I was quite tired the next day. And that's my level, really. I think sometimes we do things and we expect it to be better, but how can we be better if we haven't done the training? I think that's where I sit with it. And I think our own mindsets like perfectionism that can stop us from doing things, and that set expectations too high at the outset, when we should actually set them a bit lower and then fall to what the effort we're putting in our training to help us do whatever we want to do a bit better. That's my take.
I feel like you've stolen half the notes I've got on my screen here already. So maybe you
Really?
actually are ChatGPT and you typed out the answer to me here. Because it is, like you said, the training, and for the context, everyone's got this right. This, it might be something you've got externally, but because you've sorted out, this is your training, your habits, where you set yourself to. The question it kind of gave me here to anchor an episode on is, it said, I've I've lost it on the list now. Here we go. When things don't go wrong, do you become who you want to be, or who you've trained yourself to be? And it's like you said there, so I mean, I can't believe it's been 6 years on the tennis. I still feel like that's something that's quite new, but obviously that's well established with you now.
I thought that.
And you've put in a lot of effort, you've put a lot of time. So when you have those times when you play and things don't go quite well, or you're a bit tired, or you're stressed, or whatever it is, you know, your ability is defined by every other day you've had beforehand and what you've put into it. And that, you know, being exchanged clear what your habits are. That's what is that? How have you trained yourself to deal with adversity? How have you trained yourself on resilient? What effort have you put into your skills? And it's one of the quotes here, and it's what you said, why it jumps out to me, is it says, the question for us is, what's the difference between having high standards and having unrealistic expectations? You know, you weren't going to walk in year one become a champion, and you can almost force yourself to throw in the towel if you set that unrealistic expectation rather than a high standard, and you're incrementing yourself there bit by bit, little piece, which I say is in the suggested things here, and it's exactly what you said. And I think tennis, or like the walking that you did, even the cold bath things or cold showers, because you have to get you still do them, but you have to get yourself used to them. You have to force that to become a habit, so it's there and it's ready for you to use or fall back on as well.
Every morning I do that. I jump in the shower. I don't do that. I sort of just put it. You know, when you go in the electric shower and you put, I don't know whether you got electric showers, but you know when you first put it on, it's freezing, isn't it? It takes a bit of time to warm up. So I just use that as my cold shower bit. I just go, I'm just going to stick into it. I sometimes don't want to press that button. I still go, do I press that button?
It's a little bit of apprehension there, is there still?
It's still like, oh, you know it's coming. But once it's happened, once it's on your body, because you've done the prep, right? It's not so bad. But the first time is the hardest time. But when to friends of mine in Wales, and I did their cold bath thing, and it was really cold, of course, and I took my breath away. Then I went to Ballantyne's, you know, probably 6 months later, and it wasn't as bad. My brain had remembered, hey,
you're a bit prepared.
This isn't so bad. And I could really actually sit with it was still painful. It was still painful, but you could sort of more sit with discomfort because you've been on that path before. You've, as the quote says, you fall to level your training because your brain has been on that before. It gets used to it. Well, not that you get used to it, but you know, it gives you a bit more path, a leeway to sort of resist or stay there a bit longer. Like my exercises is the same. You know, I started introducing skipping and slam balling, and yeah, at first it's absolutely killing me. And as you do more reps, it becomes a little bit easier, but you don't really notice it. It's a weird thing. It's sort of, you just suddenly I'm doing 10, suddenly I'm doing 11. You know, it's crazy.
Accumulation of marginal gains.
Yeah, it's like the press ups. I started with like 5 because I couldn't really do on that press up board. I ended up doing 30, 50, 60, 70. Crazy stuff. But it is, and I love the marginal gains thing. And again, it's the level of your training, it's the effort you put in, and just do one more, just one more. And it doesn't feel like a lot in the moment, but over time, you fall to the level of your training, right? You'll be as good as your training or the reps that you do. And I really do believe that. And of course, by doing it, you live the experience. That's why I could tell you about the training for the tennis, because I've actually picked something that I'm actually going through. That's why I always say on this podcast that I like to pick things that we go through. And that's why I love what you guys do. You're picking, oh, where in my life have I done that, or I haven't done it? This is why maybe I've got X or Y. And that's what I love about this podcast, because we share these things that are real that we're doing. We try and pivot back these quotes to actually things and events in our lives, which is, I think, valuable, because this is the everyday person's podcast, right? Hey, thank you, Akipun, for the lovely likes. Thank you, appreciate that. New person to our TikTok. Akipun, feel free to ask a question, by the way, on TikTok if you do. Also on YouTube if you're around. Have you got the YouTube up? I don't know if there's anyone on there.
I've got the YouTube up, yes. Grandpa,
The
YouTube.
YouTube.
If you go to the Google and search for the YouTube and the Jose Noya, you'll be able to find us there, and on TikTok as well. And we are live each and every week. Right, Ryan. So, from your habits, training, what are your kind of habits that you're working on, or you rely on when you're under pressure?
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced I agree with the quote.
Okay.
I will go that far. Not fully, anyway. I think in some scenarios you will resort to training you're given, but if you're put into a job that, or you're asked to do something that potentially you haven't had training in, and I'm not talking about fire safety risks or safety risks at work, but I'm talking about, I don't know, you're being put in front of a new audience for the first time, or you're meeting an external stakeholder for the first time, or you might be meeting a client in person for the first time. You may get, in my experience from multiple jobs in the past, you may get a do this from your line manager or don't behave like this from your line manager, but you don't necessarily get training per se in those sorts of scenarios. You're just kind of in a bit of a sink or swim. And I suppose you rely on other skills that you've learned in other areas of life, like your socialization skills or networking skills, or any of those sorts of things. I get it to an extent, but I'm not sure it's something that I think applies to everything, if that makes sense. However, I do think if you're in a job or you're doing something that is really, really, really process and training driven, I'm talking like a firefighter, for example, or an emergency services responder, you will always resort back to your training, because that's what's kind of bludgeoned into you when you learn it, is that this is the practice to do it and this is why you do it, so to speak. So I do get it from that perspective, but I suppose for me, if I thought about a blue sky world where I was the CEO of a FTSE 500 company or whatever, I think I would want people to rely on not their common sense, because you're not really allowed to use that phrase these days, are you? But I'd want them to rely on their training, but also assess the situation where, in a way that means that they don't have to rely on what a piece of paper tells them, but they can actually apply real world or real people principles to stuff. Does that make sense?
So how do you get that? So like you said, the sink or swim thing. So what's the difference between someone who sinks and someone who swims?
Yeah, I suppose you would need to have metrics, and you would need to understand kind of the difference in those scenarios. If you go to, like, if you use the example of the office type scenario that I gave, I suppose if people aren't great at networking, or they overshare, or they overpromise and underdeliver, I suppose you would work with that person on kind of the expectation setting that they give, and the conversational patterns that they have, and those types of things. But you won't really know if somebody's going to be good in front of an external sometimes until you put them in front of an external sometimes, or you put somebody, you won't know. I'm using a specific work example that we'll probably both know, but you won't, in some scenarios, you won't know how well somebody will cope with the pressure until you put them under the pressure. And I suppose there has to be a sink or swim slight focus to
for that person, if
parts of
if
that.
they went in and they did okay, but they thought they could do better,
Yeah.
and that person, their mindset, how do they get better?
They think, what do you mean? How do they get better if they think they can be better?
Well, they did okay, but they could do better. So how do they get better?
Sure. Yeah, I suppose it would be feedback from the person that you're potentially shadowing, or the person that's shadowing you, or perhaps you'll get some client feedback from the person that you're actually meeting with that might help you understand those things a bit better. I think that what I was trying to say is that you won't really necessarily go through training sessions to cover everything that you're going to face. So I think what I'm trying to labor on, which I'm not really doing a very good job of, is you want people. I would want somebody, if I was to run a business like that, that would apply the logic you teach them, but use real world examples to find a happy medium in the middle. So I'm not really sure I'm explaining myself very well.
So, and I think it's a mismatch on the use of training. I think you're very much viewing training as, hello,
Classroom type
I'm going
sessions,
to give
yeah,
you
I
some
guess.
stuff. Whereas for me, I love public speaking,
Sure.
and I'm reasonable at it. So to some people yesterday said I'm quite good at it. They might
Mm-hmm.
just be saying that because I'm in front of them and you have to say nice things to people, but I'll take it for what it is.
I'm sure you would, yeah.
I would.
I would, yeah, 100%.
So if that is true and I'm good at it because I practiced, not because someone gave me training, not because someone external put on me to do it, because
Yeah,
I practice, and practice is training. And I am as good at public speaking as the effort I've put into being good at it. I'm as good at podcasting as the effort I've put into it, which obviously is very limited effort, which is why I'm so poop at it. Or any number of things. So I think you fall back to the level of preparation you've allowed yourself to have. Perhaps that sink or swim thing. That's
yeah, I
the
suppose.
skills people have got. Can you self learn? Can you develop? Can you understand what
Yeah,
things are? Can you reach it? And some of it might be I need some training on this, or it might be I need to practice on this. But
yeah,
ultimately, if you just expect it all to happen to you, it's never going to happen. You'll only go as far as that effort you've put in. I think there's a lot of notes from Mr.
yeah. I think
ChatGPT in there, but that's one of the things in here.
I think I misinterpreted the word training for kind of prep, more prep instead of training, I guess.
Yeah.
But
So what are your?
I do.
Sorry, go on.
I was. So can you give me the quote again? Give me the quote again,
Yeah, yeah.
so I understand. So I can start again.
I've got to go to the top. I
I'm
just
wasting. I'm
noticed in the
wasting
notes
everybody's time now.
there. Inspirational. We apologise. Yeah, you haven't. Don't be silly. Um, can't even freaking find it now. Oh my god. We do not rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. So back to
Yeah.
Joe and his
Okay.
tennis. If he thought he
Okay.
was going to be amazing, he doesn't practice, he's going to be crap.
Yeah.
Whereas now
Yeah.
he's practiced, he's still a bit crap, but he's better than he would have been.
Yeah. So no, when I apply that with a lens of preparation rather than classroom based training, I completely agree with the quote. Um, I think you are only as good as you can only rely on winging it to a certain extent. And we've done many podcasts, and I'm sure Lee would half tell you half of his career is made out of winging things here and there. But I you probably wouldn't, but you know what I mean. But I think it's you can only go so far before you end up looking like a bit of a bullshitter without trying to swear too much. Do you know what I mean?
Level 18.
You can
18's
only
coming. The
you can
18's coming.
only you can only push the lack of prep or the winging it scenario to a certain extent. Otherwise, somebody that is smarter than you or is more aware of than you or understands what you're doing better than you will catch you in doing it quicker than you think they will, so to speak. Um, but that doesn't mean that if you don't prep, you're being lazy. But also, if you haven't prepped, why haven't you prepped? I think there are conversations you would have with yourself as a person to understand why you've not done that. Do I need to take these things more seriously? Do I think that everything's a walk in the park, or do I actually need to take a step back and assess my own performance and effort giving that I'm trying to give either the job I'm doing or the task I was given?
I just realised, by the way, I'm a terrible editor. And on YouTube, our names are the wrong way round. So I'm very professionally moving our name badges on the screen right now for people that are watching along. Because that's how we roll. And
For
that's how
when
we
for
do
when
things.
for when
Who's who then?
ChatGPT so
Am
for
I
when Chat
Brian or am I Lee? Go on.
yeah
Right.
so for when ChatGPT does its summary and it remembers that you said at the very start that there are no technical issues this week.
Well played. Well played.
Very good, Ryan. Love that.
I think I like the one thing. So if I ever wrote an autobiography, which I'm not going to do, once upon a time I think I wanted to, but who reads books now? They're not a thing. Only Joe. Joe's the last one. When Joe dies, they won't even sell books anymore.
Books.
He's looking around at his
Can't see
books
it.
right now. But I'd call it 50% by accident. So you're about right there. But I'd like it, like you said with the prep, it's like being a stand-up comic. So stand-up comics go up, and especially ones that interact with the audience a lot, it's on the fly. But they can do it on the fly because they've got 100 jokes or 100 situations all in their
Yeah,
head that they've practiced adapting and tweaking and moving. So there's God knows how much prep in the background that allows them to improvise. Because, and I'd say the same for my public speaking. I'd be quite happy to get up and do a talk with no notice beforehand, but I can do that because of preparation and the style I have and way. I couldn't just do it 5 years ago. I'd have been terrible, and it's because of that prep. And back to the quote, if I just thought on day one I'm going to be best presenter there's ever been, I'm going to fall down. And well, Joe had the pain of making a video for me back in the day, which.
Oh yes,
Do
I
you remember
remember
we
that. I've still
recorded
got
in
it somewhere.
office? And it's like
That's coming out
it's
one
a
day.
5-minute blurb of me promoting something, but they must have taken us about an hour to record it because I just fell to bits in front of the camera, which I could do now, but I can do because of the practice. It was terrible. It was like start again, start again, start again. I said that wrong. It was very wooden. It was not.
But
It was not where I'd be now.
you may remember that 2 decades later, you and I also did some filming of stuff, Lee. Just commenting on your ages there, and and you were
Joe, not me,
still
yeah.
you were similar in those scenarios as well. You probably won't remember, but there were definite scenarios where you would look back and say that you still did it in those scenarios. And I think we're much better at this now than what we were. We must be nearing 7 years now, or
Yes,
nearing
we
Mark.
are. We are.
Um, I remember we talk about it semi regularly, but the first 50 episodes, I must have been given 2 hours worth of footage for a 45-minute podcast because these guys wouldn't get through a sentence without saying no, start again, or no, we'll start that bit again.
I think you'll find that would be Lee. Just to let you know, like he would say,
Look, Lee,
rewind.
I try to protect you, mate, but Joe is bus throwy as hell today.
No, wasn't that way. Wasn't meant that way. It was like Lee was directing, because I had no idea. Like Lee was directing it the best as he could, which was brilliant. I was just gabbing, and he was like, "No, we need to stop that." So Lee was the director to make sure we had something. So
we were definitely of the belief that a podcast needed to be a rehearsed play at a big theatre every week. Bless our hearts, and that isn't necessarily, or it definitely isn't.
Come on and we
what they are,
an hour, but it's because we do it every week and we train for practice, and that's why this is part of that for me. The prep, it's live training because the podcast is important. It's not like it's just practice, but every time we do one, we get better, and those skills are transferable other places.
Yeah, no, of course, and look, the subject's valid because we only have the subject from ChatGPT because I hadn't prepared a subject for this week, so we're essentially.
I love the ownership.
Well, we're essentially doing a winging it episode with the help of ChatGPT because I didn't prep for the podcast because, and it would be very easy for me to say that I was too busy today. But I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't even look at my phone until gone 5 o'clock to realise that we were doing this today. So I've completely forgotten well, not forgotten, but I hadn't even put it into perspective that it was today. But that it happens in everyday life. These aren't, if you haven't fully prepared for something, it also isn't fully always your fault. Yesterday, for example, I got invited to a 4-hour work meeting at 8 o'clock on the day. I had no idea what it was or why I was going or what prep I needed to do, but it was with my head of department, their boss, and a load of people surrounding the work that we do in those areas. So I I logged into work at 8:30 yesterday morning and was bang, 4-hour meeting straight in front of me. And I was like,
wow,
love that. Luckily, I didn't have to present or talk about anything, which was nice. But if I did, that's in that scenario that I think my winging it ability would hopefully have carried me. And if it didn't carry me, then I would have easily have not sat there and said, "Well, you didn't give me a heads up." But I know in the back of my mind and in my heart of hearts that I couldn't have given this 100% because I wasn't given a platform to actually try and give 100% if I ever needed to. But I think what I'm trying to say is you need, and I try and use this perspective all the time, but you've got to cut yourself a little bit of slack when you are up against it. If you work in a high pressured environment, yeah, you probably accept that you're in a high pressured environment before you start, but you do have to cut yourself some element of slack when things don't always go to plan. There are only 168 hours in the week. Lee has the same amount of hours that I do, but he does a fundamentally, I think I used the word stratospherically different job than I did last week when I spoke to him. We still try and achieve similar goals, but on a much different scale. But we both have the same amount of time to achieve it. You can only do so much with the time that you have sometimes. And I think people and everyone need to remember to be kinder to themselves as well.
Absolutely, it's little steps. This is all about habits, not meteoric sweeping change. That's what does it. If you work on your habits, if you work on those things, little bits, little bits, little bits. That's what builds. That's how you change. This is, you know, how am I going to be different in 5 years, not how am I going to be different tomorrow. And it's from, and it's, I use this quite a lot now, Joe, that I've taken from you, that you've taken. I think it's a James Clear, is to put a vote in the box for who you want to be every day.
The
And I
identity.
really,
Mm.
there's just those little, and you might not do it one day, but that doesn't mean you don't do it the next day and the next day and the next day, and keep going in the right direction.
I'm a huge believer in that. I mean, that really hit me hard when I read the book. Oh my God, that's so powerful, because it gets away from that, I've got to do it every single day. No, as long as you outweigh the days you do against the days you don't, you're going to win in the end.
Absolutely.
Which I absolutely love.
Right, listener takeaway I want to do now. We've got a couple of minutes left, guys, so wrap it all up. But for those listening, we'd love to get your feedback. Leave some comments. What is the one area that you think you could stop waiting for the moment and start making those steps in that right direction? Have a think about that. See what you can take away from that. And what's the habit? What is the habit you could start fixing now? They're my questions. My takeaway for today, and I'll give you first, is prep. It's just prep. It's all and reps. You called it earlier, Jose. Reps. It's all about reps. Jose, takeaway from you.
I just want to say my takeaway from this is, it is still, for me, I'm going to do the tennis analogy. If you want to be better, you do have to do the reps. Just do the reps. Even if it's a small amount, do the reps. And I just wanted, before I hand over, thanks Frizzle, thanks Paynan for joining, thanks for all the likes. I really appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. I haven't seen Triple Eight, but I've seen also there was someone else who was on it, which is liking like mad. So thank you all of you for really doing that. It's brilliant. It's done an AI summary as well on TikTok. I don't know if you know that, but it was brilliant. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And Akupem Beyonce, thank you very much for massive likes. So thank you, all of you, you lovely people, for being loyal to us.
You're making me want to cut in and say cut at the moment, right? Ryan, quick one, and then we're going to wrap up. We're in the last minute, guys.
I'm going to expand on Joe's takeaway and say that you have to want to be better to start being better. And that sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but unless you
Thanks, Lee. I know it leads in there. Nice one.